Hello, people. Welcome to the Lee Cole, now James Proctor podcast. And today we're going to do an interview with Jeff Nadu. And let me just explain real quick. Jeff and I, we've had some issues in the past. Those are done. And we've never really had a real interview. It's always been interviews about arguing with something, we disagree or we're going after somebody. This is going to be a real interview because I never really got to know Jeff, his life, what he's done in his life. He has a very successful show. And James, how you doing? And
Hey,
what would you like to say before we say hi to Jeff?
no, just looking forward, Jeff, to having this time with you. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Lee, you and I, we've known each other for a while now at this point.
Couple
I almost
years.
feel like you're a guy that I'll remember my whole life. How could I forget Lee Cole? But Lee, I think you become a good sport with all this. Obviously we've been back and forth. I think, look, we've all went back and forth with a lot of people on here. But with you, I think you're all in. I think you're a kind-hearted guy deep down. I believe that, and I noticed that you're really trying to take your show to a different level and kind of just do stuff where, look, it's not easy to do this stuff. You
No.
get constant, hate from people. You get, people jumping down your throat about everything, and it seems like you're trying to kind of take your channel in a different direction. And look, I've said before, I think the biggest problem sometimes with this genre is there's not a lot of great content, and whether or not we want to agree with it, all of us are, we use each other to help each other. I've said before, the way you grow a channel is you need other channels to do content, right? You need,
Yes.
Dom Sakali, you need OC Shorts, you need RG Roger, you need Sammy Gravana, you need Michael, you need all these shows because, I don't want to get into a deep thing with this, but if you look at analytics, you can find who's watching your show, right?
Yeah.
And how they're getting to watch your show. And, without other mob content, we're not going to grow. And that's one thing I never understood about this genre. I think it should be more about helping each other. And that's one of the reasons I've tried to always, whether it was your show or Tom LaVecchia or whoever, I try to grow this genre in some way because there's not a lot of great people doing it.
No, there's not. And the main thing that I've noticed is ever since I put the BS to the side, stopped dealing with the trolls, stopped dealing with these channels that are attack channels, I feel a lot better about myself. And the show we have so many new people coming in now. I don't even recognize their names. They're real people coming in. They're not trolls. And it's a big difference when you have those kind of people coming in and watching your show.
Yeah, I think, you have to just kind of establish who you are in the world and in the genre. And, there are always going to be people that don't like what you're doing or they have something negative to say. But I think in my career, man, like I've always had that. I mean, you can look back to everything I've done. I mean, you either love me or you hate me. I don't know if there's a lot of middle ground. And I think you're probably pretty similar. I
Yes.
don't know if
Yep.
there are people that either like Lee. Now, James, I think, is in a good spot because most people just like him. But, I think one thing I've learned too, though, if you look back on anyone that's been successful in media, and I'm talking about really successful, even in politics too, or wherever, you have to have that certain tinge of people that don't like you. You have some controversy around you because, I've learned too that the people that generally don't like you are the ones that support you the most. So I think you have to have some certain interesting side to you, maybe whether it's that people don't like you or whatever. So
And you
you've
do
learned that.
and you do things. I'm going to put something up. You do things that are clever, but at the same time irritating as hell. And I'm going to show you something, Jeff. Okay.
I've learned from the best.
I have to show you this because you're kind of sticking it to the Knicks fans and say they're little Dennis Rappaport and those guys that support him. So I found this very funny, to be honest with you. But this can get underneath your skin. I had to play this.
Well, I didn't think you would play that, but yeah, hey, look, I learned from the best, man. My boss is a guy that, same thing, you either love him or hate him, Dave Portnoy. So I've always been taught to, there's not everyone. And if you look in the comments section of that video, I mean, people are trying to destroy me, going at my weight, going at all sorts of stuff. But I don't care. For me, it's about engagement. It's about, people involving what I do. And, I think, again, it's added a nice side to some of the good things that I do. So, yeah, look, I think Knicks fans are goofs. I mean, I think they behave like idiots. I mean, they haven't won shit. They're out in the street celebrating like they won the NBA finals. And it was, I think, nice to see them go down. I think, and look, I've had, even with the Eagles, like I'm a fan of the Eagles. I've went viral for slamming draft picks they've had and all sorts of stuff. So whether it's negative or positive, I don't have any shame in what I do, Lee. You're never going to get under my skin. You can call me any name in the book. And that's one of the things I've always gotten a kick out of on here is that, some of you guys say things about me and it's like, I've heard way worse over the years. So for me, it doesn't mean much, but yeah, you gotta have some fun to it with it.
You're on mute, Lee.
If you look at the best guys on radio and stuff,
Yeah.
the sportscasters and stuff, some of them were hated, very controversial, and they would piss people off, especially like in Chicago, Philadelphia, New York. And controversy sells, and there's no doubt about that. James?
I mean, Lee, real quick, I mean, when you're relating it to sport, do you know how much, Skip Bayless makes per year?
Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith, even like Howard Stern. Howard Stern is a very maligned individual, but he went his own way, did his own things, and is controversial, but controversy sells. We saw that in the presidential elections the last couple of years. Controversy sells. Nobody cares about the internet and what you do on it. As long as you don't go too deep and go to some really bad waters, you'll be fine. And people want controversy. And I think, James, like I saw with you recently, that you've done some videos where people maybe weren't totally happy with what you did. So no one cares in the end. It's all about controversy.
And when you say controversy sells, perfect example right here. The other day, and we're going to say one political thing real quick, and I'm going to get away from it.
Yeah.
CNN brought Trump on to humiliate him, and this is what happened, people.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, whether you like the guy or not,
Right.
I think you have to. He has played the game at the highest level. Like he gets it. RJ Roger and I talked about that before. We've talked about how like we may not agree with everything he does or what he's about, but he is a person that plays chess when everyone else is playing checkers. I think even you, Lee, like you're a lot smarter than I think you look. No,
I hope so.
You've done some things that I think are pretty clever, frankly. So yeah, I don't let it bother me too much. This is the internet. You're going to have that happen, and
you're going to make mistakes. You got to correct your mistakes and move on. And I'm going to let James ask you some questions because James wrote down a list of questions. I have no idea what they are. So James, hit it.
Yeah. No. I mean, you have a fascinating career, and so I'm just curious about. And I've heard you speak a little bit about. You came from a good family. I think it's cool. Your father listens to the sit down, and so how did you get involved in? I guess you got started first within Barstool Sports, right? Is that kind of how you got into this genre?
Well,
and
I mean, I've been around
social
Barstool.
media.
Yeah, I've been around Barstool for a while. I mean, we're going on 5-6 years. I've been connected to Barstool, but I've been doing content first in the sports betting world really since the early 2010s. I mean, it's been I like to say I was retired. I became retired in 2015. That's when I left like the workforce and said, I'm going to go into, media and try to create a side for myself and try to make money off the internet. And I had regular jobs. I've said before, I'm proud of the fact I've never been arrested. I'm not in the mafia. I'm not connected to any street gang. I lived in Philadelphia. Obviously you see people, but I got into the mob in that world just through watching, The Sopranos, when I was a kid, and I just always had an interest in history and stuff like that. But the mob stuff came later. But media, I've been involved since the early 2010s.
Okay.
I remember my dad. He told me, he said, you like to talk, why don't you start a podcast? They were becoming popular in the early 2010s, YouTube, stuff like that. And I started doing stuff. And I remember one of the first shows I did, I think I had 6 people watch it. And it was mostly just me clicking it and like my family clicking it. But for me, I had goals, like steps to what I wanted to do.
Right.
First, it was I want to get decent at presenting something, right? On
Right.
in front of a camera and on audio.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, how can I try to create a following behind this,
Mm-hmm.
which was Twitter in 2009. I created an account. And then it was, how can I get this following to support me and I can make money off of it? And
Mm-hmm.
back then I worked for various companies that did sports betting picks and stuff. And I was giving out information. They were paying me to do videos and stuff. And
Okay, I see.
yeah, I just kind of took it from one to another. And I remember in 2018, I got connected to Barstool through one of their very high profile people. I met
Mm-hmm.
with Dave Portnoy. This was before gambling was legalized or we had any illegal
Right.
sports books. And the rest is history. And now, I've kind of blew it up, and then I started to sit down and that worked out. So it's been
Mm-hmm.
kind of a level of things.
Right. What did you so with the so talking about the going on the internet and did you have any formal education or did you just do it self-learned?
No, I didn't go to college. I just, I grew up in the age where I'm not Gen Z. I was more millennial to where we
Mm-hmm.
had the internet, but I grew up DSL, that kind of thing, right? Where
Right.
it
Yeah.
takes, a day or so to download a video or something.
Exactly.
And we were introduced to cell phones more like when I was in high school, but I
Right.
got to know the internet. I remember in high school, I used to always do the announcements. I did the
Mm-hmm.
announcements 2-3 years. I was big into video production. I like that sort of thing. And my dad always instilled in me and my brothers and sisters that, like, my dad had his own business. My mom had
Mm-hmm.
her own business.
Okay.
We were always instilled to go out and create our own business. And to
Sure.
this day, my sister, my brother, they have businesses. I went into my own thing. So we were always instilled to do that. And I did it. But no, I had no training. I just kind of learned, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, sitting in front of a computer when nobody's watching, just trying to
Right.
master how to speak and dictate and put out information. And I did a lot of shows in front of people that didn't watch. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just me kind of training myself. And eventually I
Right.
just worked it up.
Well,
Sure.
and I'll say this about you, Jeff. When you came into this, you just came in with nothing into the mob genre, and the next thing I know, you're blowing past everybody. And
Well, I think what I learned, and I think you've learned this too, and anybody, I always there aren't many that do it, but like when you're looking at like an OC Shorts or RJ or Wise Guy TV or any of these guys that are not mobsters, right? We were never in the life, right? We're just
right,
people that enjoy presenting information. Scott Bernstein, people like that.
Right.
For me, it's just I don't have that to fall back on. And I think what you are learning is that people like information, right? They
They do.
like sources. This stuff is very popular. There's a reason mob films are some of the greatest ever made. People like this. It's a glimpse into something that maybe they don't have an experience in and they find it interesting. And I found out that information is most important. I think there are definitely people out there that make money through, fighting and drama and fun stuff. But for me, I've learned people like information too. And my goal was to try to find people that no one had talked about. And I think that's
Yeah.
one thing that I really relish in. Like I did a video today as we're speaking on a guy that no one's probably ever heard of in the mob. But, and I definitely do people like the Gotti fan. I've talked about them a lot, but my goal is to find people that no one's talked about. And it's allowed me to find out that when you put information out, people respect it and they become
Mm-hmm.
fans and they hit that subscribe button and they're there to view every week.
are you amazed by how much this genre, the mob genre, has grown in the last year?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm even impressed with what I've been able to do. I remember when I started to sit down in April 2021, it started as a podcast. And the goal of it was when I started it, the first episode was on Vincent Gigante. That was the first episode I did. And I had left Barstool. I've been with Barstool 2 separate times. I had
Okay.
left on my own the first time. And the goal in I like to set goals every year, guys. I set on January 1st, I have one goal that year that I'm going to achieve. In 2020, it was I'm going to lose weight, right? I did that. In 2021, I wanted to create a goal that I wanted to get into something besides sports that I could fall back on. And I always enjoyed mob content and stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to just jump in and do this. And I did it. And the goal was to just have fun with it. I didn't know if anybody would listen to it, whatever.
Right.
But by like episode 10, I was getting on download on audio, I was getting like 10,000 listens, which
That's
on
great.
podcast downloads is, I mean, most podcasts don't get several hundred listens per week.
Exactly.
So for me, I kind of established a name, and then I thought, well, I need YouTube too, because when you're a Barstool, they teach you to put your brand everywhere, right? Whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, wherever.
Yep.
So I did the YouTube, and I remember Lee, I think I've said this before, you and I think you were the first person I talked to in this, and I saw you had created a channel, and I saw you were pretty new too, right? You had this channel where you're talking about A-Light and some of these other people, and I said, hey, maybe we can work on something, and that's when I met you, and it just kind of went from there. I never thought I'd get to the point where I am now, and like the show is just, I mean, it's popular, whether or not you like it or not. I've been able to create an arc with it, and I'm happy. And the goal is to keep going and to keep getting bigger. So.
James.
Yeah. So, talking about the content. So one of the things that, I appreciate about what you're doing is you're exposing people on social media that either outright lie about their involvement in crime, even more than the mafia, but in crime in general, or they embellish what they did. And so, you've done that. I know that Lee has done that. And
I've lived
even, right, Fat Bald Sicilian, that's saying that he's done. And so, what I appreciate about you is that you're trying to have a real version of history, and it just seems like that it seems like we're always coming up with new people coming out that we've never heard about, but then all of a sudden, they had this magnificent career in the criminal life. And so what's your thoughts on that, and on what people are doing to make a name of themselves on social media and people are believing it?
Yeah, I think it's probably the most destructive thing that we really have happening in this genre, because with the information age, you can be anyone you want on the internet. You can create a profile of yourself, and there are these charlatans that believe, and they have some sort of tinge of connection to a neighborhood, right? Maybe in Brooklyn or Queens, where they can say, okay, well, I have a last name that ends in a vowel, and I can prove that. And I've lived in this place maybe for 6 months, and I can sell a story. And the good thing about them is most of the people that their stories are involved with have died. Or the one thing about the mafia that we know is it's like robbing a drug dealer, right? If you rob a drug dealer's drugs, it's not like they can run to the police. If you say you're involved with a mobster, it's not like the mobster's going to come out and say, hey, I didn't know that guy. They don't even acknowledge it. So you can say and do whatever you want. And these people have done it. And I'm not talking about the Gravanos and the A-Lights and the Borellos and the Catolos and the De Leonardos. Those guys we know had some connection to the mafia. Do I think some of those folks embellish what they were and who they were? Sure. And I've done videos denouncing those things. Do I think John A-Light killed all these people? Of course not. And I've talked about that publicly. Do I think he was connected to the mob? Sure it was. I think that's been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But you have this certain group of individuals that have used this as a map to hawk books and fake stories. And we've seen very credible people like Vlad TV fall for these people. It really just goes to, I want people to realize, and it'll never win because these people always will have a place, but you have to do your research on people. You can't just take them for their word. And it's not everybody. We know those people, though. The Anthony Raymondis, the Danny Trios, no offense, Ali. I mean, the Derek Galanises. These people are fake phonies that have no connection. And I think we are owed the listener. We police this. This is our genre. And we cannot just put these people on for views. It is not the right way to do things. I've always said I will never platform someone on this channel that I cannot verify. I've had so many people, and I'm sure you have as well. I've had so many people reach out and say, I was a cop. I was a mobster. I was a drug dealer. Okay, so you were a cop. I would love to speak to an NYPD detective, but I need to see your badge. I need to see that you were in prison. You gotta map out these people, because we are doing a disservice to the listeners and viewers that check these channels out by not putting out quality info. And I will say this, Have I gotten every single thing I've ever said correct? Probably not. I'm sure I've missed stuff over the years, but I truly try. I sit here and I'll show you these things here. I've truly tried to get everything correct with what I do, and that's all I can do. But yes, I will police this genre. I think it's my job and our job to do it.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you an interesting little thing we're going to do right now. I'm going to show you some people, and then I'm going to ask you why I want you to give your rundown on them, a brief rundown. But let me just ask the question. First person, Mikey Scars is here, and Mikey Scars has really been calling out Sammy Guevara, which I think is good for the genre. But I'm going to put him up. I'm going to give me your brief feelings on Mikey Scars.
I've gotten to know Mikey pretty well. I spoke to him many times. I think Michael is, and I've said it before, I think he's great for the genre. As I said earlier, I think we desperately need new people in this genre.
Mhm.
We've heard the stories from Sammy and Michael and John A. We need new people. We need new stories and new information. I always say it straight. I find Michael compelling. I think he's interesting. I think he's a real gentleman. I really do. I think he's a nice guy. As I said, I've talked to him, and he's always been very kind to me. I think him and RJ provided a different world that we're not familiar with. Because one thing I've noticed about the people on here, right? Really outside of Michael Franzese, whether it's Sammy, John A. like Gene Borello, Frankie Pasqua, they all have to make it clear they're these really tough killer, right? And we haven't really ever seen anyone come on here and say, you know what? Not really a killer. I'm just an entrepreneur. I'm a racketeer. I make money. And I think that's Michael's kind of side. He's to me, a more regal part of the mob. Obviously, he has a ton of stories too. If I could say the one critique I would have of Michael is, I would love to just hear more about him and his stories. I would love to hear about, he has a long lineage in the mafia, that goes back 100 years. I mean, that is so interesting to me because, we don't have that many of those. I think, we have Michael, who his father was an OG. I know Frank Fiorellino. He has a very steep lineage in that world too. And I'd like to hear more about that. But I think Michael's really good, and I think he's taken the world in this genre by storm.
Okay, I'm going to show you somebody else who's made a lot of mistakes in this genre, even though he'd probably be at 100,000 subs now if he hasn't done some of the things he's done. I just want your honest opinion of Jimmy Calandra.
Yeah, Jimmy, I know him as well. I think Jimmy is a guy who, when it comes to these farm teams, I've kind of championed the effort to expose and put out a lot of the information about these farm teams. I think they're some of the more interesting parts of mob history.
I agree.
These young kids that were immersed in these areas that were dominated by the mob, and they said, you know what? I don't want to get a job in civil service or in a trade. I want to be a gangster. And Jimmy is a guy who was around Paul Gulino and Tommy and Fabrizio and all these guys. And I wasn't there. I don't know the things that he's done. We do know of the recorded things that Di Franzese did and Gulino did. I think Jimmy was a guy who was around. Do I think he did some of the things he said he did? I don't know. I can't answer that. I think Jimmy was lucky in the fact that he is the one guy that actually wants to speak about this stuff. Because you look at a guy like Joey Calco. Joey cooperated. Chris Paciello cooperated as well. He was around those guys. Those guys don't come out and talk. And I think Jimmy's done a really smart thing by admitting that, hey, I'm going to come out and talk. He's the only one that talks. We only have his opinion of what happened. If there's, again, and I'll give a critique to all these individuals, if there's one critique that I have of James Calandra is that I think he uses his position, his channel to sometimes taunt people. I do think that's a bit lowbrow to me, but I don't have a bad relationship with Jimmy. I would like to speak to him. I would like to ask him certain things. And maybe that will come someday.
I'm surprised he hadn't been on. You just told, I think on a couple of shows ago, you said that you've never interviewed him or you've been trying to get him in. That surprised me.
I have Jimmy's number. I've called him. I've asked him to come on. I've actually told, Jimmy lives in the New York area. I've told him, hey, I'll get you into Manhattan. You can come straight to the Barstool studio. We'll do it in person. I think for him, I think he has a family and a job, and for him, it's not easy, but I've given him the opportunity. He is not accepted at this point, but maybe someday. But I think it would be interesting, like the Sammy Michael dynamic. If a Joey Calco would pop up and start doing a channel, or Paciello, I think we could it'd
He's
be interesting to hear their
fascinating
side
guy.
of the stories, James and
Mhm.
Lee.
Yeah, but when you're that rich and you're with that
Right.
many beautiful women, do you really care?
No, and as
I
you
mean,
know, we're not going to hear from Tommy Reynolds. We're not going to hear
Right.
from Fabrizio. So we've only heard Jimmy's side, and Jimmy also benefited from coming out and talking. He was on that Nat
Sure.
Geo documentary. I think a lot of
Yes.
people, they had never heard of the Bath Avenue
he was
crew.
one of the first guys out.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
That's how I first heard about him. I didn't know
if,
who he was really until
if
the
Jimmy,
Nat Geo.
Jimmy's biggest thing I think that he's done was that he's brought to life these minor league crews.
Oh yeah.
Because people don't realize on every other street in Brooklyn there was a minor league crew, and they would kill you. There was a group of kids, and this was their turf,
Yep.
and they got underneath the bosses of that area,
Mm-hmm.
and they kicked down to those bosses, and every one of them had, like instead of going to the Yankees, they wanted to be one of those guys driving that big Cadillac.
I will say too, guys, and you're totally right. I think Jimmy has also realized that, and maybe he's went a little far sometimes with it, but I think he's kind of realized, like, hey, as long as you're talking about me, that's all I care about. And
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing I'll say positive as well about him is he doesn't seem to have much shame. He's willing to put himself out there.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have a personal issue with the guy.
Right.
I think there are things about it that are funny,
Mm-hmm.
over the years that he's done. But, I think ultimately he's the only one that comes out and speaks about this stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And the next guy I'm going to show you, this guy, what I respect about him, you could say whatever you want about him. He don't care. He doesn't answer it because he knows for his business is a bad thing to do. And I'm talking about Michael Franzese.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by Michael. I don't talk too much about him. He's actually one guy that I can't say I've ever even contacted. I'd love to speak to him. I'm sure maybe I will at some point. I think what's interesting about Michael is, if we're being really honest, and I think he'll even tell you this, his career in the mob is fairly undescriptive, isn't it? I mean,
Exactly.
he obviously had the gas tax scheme, which he was involved in. He made a shit ton of money with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to understand he didn't create it, and he was just really a liaison for the Colombo crime family in it. But, I think he was really a guy that, outside of that, we just don't know much about him. Really.
Benefited from his father's name, I think, a lot too. Maybe.
Yeah, and look, his dad was, I think, probably the most underrated person ever connected to the mafia, to be honest.
Exactly.
And Michael Franzese, when I remember I was younger, I heard of him that he was media created. It was an article that came out and talked about the richest gangsters, and he made that article.
Yep.
And that article is what made a lot of people, and also when they talked about him in the movie Goodfellas, there he was in the book.
Absolutely, that's another good point.
Those two things really helped him, and he took the ball and ran with it.
Well, that Forbes article is a great point by you, because I think we didn't kind of realize. We thought, if you ever looked at that Forbes article, it's a bunch of old guys, right? It's Pat Tony and Tony Ducks and all these different guys, people like that. And you see this young guy on it, and you see the Playboy with the planes and the suits and the cars, and he's this kind of flashy Playboy. And what I always compared Michael Franzese to is, to me, he's a kind of a lower end Michael Corleone, right? He went he tried to go to college, but his father was this big gangster, and he thought, you know what, I'm going to go into that world instead. And, obviously he wasn't to the level of Michael Corleone in a film, but, I think he was a guy who's been able to use the moniker of being a gangster. He's connected with a lot of media, right? I actually feel sorry for him sometimes, because I would go nuts having to tell the same story time and time again. And it's like, I think when his actual mob career is said and done, he didn't do that much outside, and I think he'll tell you that.
But his brand, he's able to build a brand that no one has been able to in this type of. I almost say that he's not even in the mob genre anymore. He is to a point, but he's more of a celebrity at this point.
That's 100% right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And he, you see him on Tucker Carlson and all these different places, and he is such, whoever runs his like behind the scenes stuff, like his marketing and his team, he is truly very high level. I mean, very high level. I
Yes.
mean, that is, I mean, from the speaking engagements he does to the books to the everything. I mean, he is. I mean, let me ask you guys. I mean, do you even know who was in his crew? He was a capo, right? I mean, do we even know
Yeah.
who was in his crew? It's like,
Yeah, he's a capo. I have no idea.
that's how little we know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen some pictures of people sitting around him, but none of them were really big time guys.
Don't
And
know any.
he's also told some really like interesting stories. Now, are they believable? Like he told a story one time that you ever hear the story he tells when he went and met Fat Tony in Harlem,
Yeah.
where he like essentially is told by Fat Tony that, you know, can you get these guys jobs that aren't working? I need them.
Oh,
to make
yeah.
like I don't know if that story is true, but like it's pretty interesting. Like he knew John Gotti.
Yeah.
Like, he is the benefit of what you can become if you're a gangster and you're willing to talk about it. Now, I will say this, and this is a hot button topic with certain individuals. We have to admit it. Michael Franzese is a rat, stone cold.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. And he has been able to toe the line of he's kind of a
He's
rat.
handled it the
You
best.
have to watch every single word he says because he is he's very technical with his language.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
So he will say that I have never done. So he'll always say my testimony has never caused a person to spend one day in prison. But what he doesn't say is that the guy did go to jail, and it was through a technicality that that through an appeal that he did not go to prison.
He's done a great job of surgically going around a lot of it. Now, I've been on record as saying, to me, a snitch or a rat is someone who in the mafia takes the code of omerta, which when you agree to become a member of the mafia, you say beyond extreme every situation, I will not breach the code of omerta, meaning I will not speak to the police for any reason.
Right, exactly.
And when you blatantly speak to the police, that is a blatant violation of omerta. And Michael did that. I don't think it has any bearing on who went to prison or not.
No.
Talking to the police. You remember as well, when you bring someone's name up to the police, if they don't go to jail, that doesn't mean that police don't start looking into them, right?
Sure.
I've heard stories about gangsters that they didn't even know existed until people, like, for instance, Lee, you spoke about Frank Matthews, right? The big drug kingpin. A lot of people didn't even know who Frank Matthews was until certain people started mentioning his name. Like he wasn't even on the radar, and down the road it turns into stuff. But yeah, Michael's an interesting character, and he's set for life, and his kids.
The guy I find right now that's come into this genre lately and has done a good job, and he has good people around him, is this gentleman right here, and you've interviewed him, Dominic Ciccali. Now, what I notice is his production quality is very good.
Yeah.
And he could talk about stuff that is not even mob related, and it gets a good amount of views. Why do you think that is?
Well, because I think he is, again, the difference that he has than some of these guys do is he is telling truly fresh stories. I mean,
yes,
the Bonanno crime family has not really been delved into much. I mean, you have people like Jimmy Calandra and Gene Borello, but they were associates, right? Dom Ciccali was the right-hand man to Vinny Basciano, in my opinion, last high-end gangster we've had in the mafia. And he has a fresh perspective. He's from the Bronx. We haven't really heard of anyone from the Bronx.
Yes,
and
exactly.
He is part of a group of mobsters that wasn't in the 80s or 90s. He was in the 2000s.
Exactly.
And I've been on record as saying my favorite family to talk about is the Bonannos. I'm fascinated by Joey Messino and that group. And Dom is it. I think if you look at it, probably outside of Franzese, I mean, he has done really well post-mob career, right? He's a businessman. He's done a lot of interesting things that people don't even know about, like humanitarian work and stuff like that. And he has an interesting personality. This is interesting. I don't think I've ever talked about this, but a guy connected to the streets, I won't mention his name, I talk to pretty frequently, and he is involved. He called me a couple of weeks ago and he said to me, he goes, you know who I've been watching a lot of lately? Dom Ciccali. He says he reminds me of Rocky, the way he speaks. Like he has that weird delivery, but it's interesting and it's compelling. And
Yeah.
as Lee, you said, his production value is really good, and he has, he seems like he does well, right? He has a good life, and I think he in long term is going to do really well in this. And I'm actually planning on visiting him in a month or two, and I'm going to go down and kind of hang around him and see what's going on.
And myself and James, we could always say that we actually had Dominic Cicali make a rap song about
you
it.
did.
I mean, and it was like, but he forgot about it and we moved on.
Yeah, I mean, he's even had some nice comments in our chat or in our video comments and things like that. And so I think part of it too with him is he's wanting to he enjoys what he's doing as well.
When you look back, guys, on the media, let's say, in the mob, right? And we're, media, I guess, at this point, you look at, it's almost a badge of honor when you're recognized by these individuals, right? Where like, if you look back at like George Anastasia, right? I remember in the 90s, Philadelphia mob boss John Stanfa put a hit out on George Anastasia.
Oh,
wow. He said, we want to throw a grenade in his window. He was a writer for the Philadelphia Daily News.
Yeah. Very famous.
Geraldo Rivera was threatened by John Stanfa. I mean, John Gotti used to talk regularly to John Miller. It's kind of been a cat and mouse. Jerry Capisci, I know he's gotten under people's skin. I surely get under people's skin. I haven't said who it was, but I had an interview I did about a month ago. I put the interview out, and within an hour, true story, I got a call from a lawyer from Queens, New York, and he says, I represent a member of the mafia, and he has a real problem with the video you put out. And I asked him, respectfully, who it was, and he said, the individual isn't mad at you. He respects what you do. He understands what you do, but he doesn't feel that the story that was told, one of them was true about it. And he asked me if I'd take the part out, and I respectfully took his name out of the one story he told. But I told the lawyer, I said, respectfully, if he does not want people to talk about him, he shouldn't be in the mafia, and it's kind of a cat and mouse game between us and those people. And yes, you can say you had a rap song written about you. It's a badge of honor for you, Lee. There you go.
Well, you know why? Because about 2 weeks before that, I spoke to you, Jeff, and you said he's not going to ever answer you.
I didn't think he would ever answer you publicly, but
hey, I want to show you a picture I see it every once in a while, and I get kind of cringy about it. I want you to give me your opinion of this picture. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Your opinion.
Well, look,
that was taken in a Brazilian prison.
Yeah. Hey, listen, this is why I think John A. to me is very interesting, because he has become the most hated figure in this genre. He's public enemy number one, without
maybe Dean Barillo. It's like a close one.
Yeah, like they're both hated, right?
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I've realized as I've gotten older about John A. I remember when the book came out, Gotti's Rules, and I remember when George Anastasia put his name on it. I thought that was such a coup for A. to get him to write the book, because I consider Anastasia to be, if not the one of the best mob writers ever. I mean,
he's up there, Bernstein and
Selwyn Rabb, and those guys. And I thought that was a real coup to get him to write a book, because the one thing about George Anastasia you have to remember is he is not going to buy your bullshit, right? No. And the fact that he wrote the book was interesting. I think John A. is a guy who some of his stories I think are true, absolutely. And I think he has the benefit of, whether or not you like the guy, you know what he has that most people don't?
What's that?
He has photos of him with John Jr. He's sitting there. They're hanging out. He was at, and they don't mention this, he was at Victoria Gotti's wedding. He was at Junior's wedding. Junior was his best man at A-Light's wedding. He has that to fall back on. And I've said before, I think if John A-Light was associated with any other gangster in history, he would not be as popular as he is, but he had the backing of one Gotti, and the name Gotti is big in this genre. It just is. And he has the benefit of that. If he was associated with, Carmine Persico, I don't think he'd have been as popular, but he is.
I think the problem with John A. Light is that he doesn't have to lie about what he's done, and he does.
I think that's his biggest mistake.
Yeah.
I think if he would have just, and listen, I've talked openly about this as well. I did a show on John 2-3 weeks ago. I always try to stay in the middle. I don't let facts. I let facts kind of be the driver, right?
Sure.
And I know there are people that aren't going to be happy with things I do. That's been very apparent. We all know those people that are not happy with things I do. But I always told myself, I will never work for anyone. I'm not going to be on the take for you and say things about you because you think it's nice. I don't think that's how a true journalist should operate. And,
Right.
I just call a spade. And I don't have a hate for anyone. I truly will say that. I don't hate anyone. I will tell you what we know. To me, Lee, and I told you this, Lee, facts are stuff that people think are facts, but sometimes they're not fact. Like a fact is, I'm a white male. That's a fact, right?
Right.
My name is Jeff. That's a fact.
Mhm.
Your name is Lee Cole. That's a fact. Your name is James. That's a fact. A fact is, I kind of heard this one time and I don't really know, but it's a fact. That's a fact. And I think John A. Light sometimes bends the truth. I think he embellishes. I think his attitude sometimes is a bit crazy. I have 2 3-minute voicemails from John A. Light berating me for saying things in the video that he didn't agree with. He says I'm on the take from the Gaudis, which I think we are well aware.
We are all waiting for our
Not
checks.
true.
We're all waiting for our checks.
Yeah, I mean, I think in me though, it's well aware that I am not one of the favorites of that family.
Right.
But he was even mad at me, and I thought the video I did was pretty fair to him. But I'm not going to put out that I think he knew about the Castellano hit. I just don't believe that. But I think a lot of the things he says are probably.
But Jeff, you said you don't believe that, but that's the thing, though. Many people have come and said, "Well, he was friends with John Jr. Maybe John Jr. told him ahead of time." And I'm thinking,
well, I don't think John Jr. even knew.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
they
No,
don't
he
get
didn't,
it. It's just like, but a lot of people believe this stuff. It's amazing. Tony Pizza, people believe him. But here's what I want. I'm not going to get into that. That'll ruin the whole interview. I'm going to show you a family that you've been kind of harsh on.
Yeah.
And I want you to say 3 nice things about that family and nothing else.
Which I have done. They don't ever bring that up, but sure. I have no problem admitting it. So this has become a point of contention that I have it out for the Gotti family. So you want me to say 3 nice things?
That's it. 3 nice things.
I think they are when we think of the word family. I don't know of a family, at least to me, in the mafia that's been associated with the mafia. They are a true family, right? They stick up for each other. They are loyal. They are incredibly fierce in defending who they are. And, I think when it comes to that word, like they embody the word family, right? They have strong women, right? Victoria and Angel and Victoria, the mother, and some of the grandkids. I mean, they're strong women. And I think they have shown that family to them is most important, and they will die on the hill of defending their name. And, I think there's a certain level of respect to that. I really do. Number 2, I would say that they're also incredible, for the most part, parents to their kids. I think if you look widely at most of the kids, their kids are upstanding people. I think they've done a good job at raising their kids, particularly John, the 3 kids you're seeing there. I mean,
yes.
I know Angel's kids. I think one of them had at one point 3 sons. I think we joke around with the show they had, and I've often said I think it's a great show. I love that show. I think they've also become, for the most part, pretty good kids. You occasionally have a kid that didn't go his right way, but
Sure.
I think they're good parents. Number 3, I would say they've really done a great job at, let's just be real. They have created a standing in the world for themselves through things their father did. And I don't think there's any issue with that. We all do that. I'm the person I am because of my family, my parents, right? They did for me what maybe they didn't have, and they made their way for me in life. And I understand and respect that. And I think they do too. I do want to say this to them very openly, because let's be real, Lee, you've been known to be close to Angel. I truly don't have an issue with them. I am the one person I think here that I'm not worried about what people think. I try to say things that I have proof beyond a reasonable doubt is true. I've kindly told Angel if she can push back on anything I've said with fact, I will gladly give a correction to it. I've
Well, you know
invited her
what?
on
We're going to leave that up, and I'm going to make a short out of that.
Yeah, I've invited her.
Because what you did there was perfect, because we needed to hear that from you. And I want to make one thing clear. There's one thing that you said about her son maybe having a drug problem. Let's remember where that garbage came from.
Yeah, and look,
Gene Barillo.
If I'm wrong, I apologize. I could have sworn that maybe she had mentioned that maybe he did, but I don't know. If he did or he didn't, I apologize.
But he's a good man. He's a good father. He's taking care of his.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I haven't talked to Angel in a couple of weeks. I'm not here defending Angel. I just wanted to put that part up here. And,
I'll say this too. I've talked, about John Sr. I think he is like, if the word balls was associated with the mafia, John Gotti had more balls than anybody. John Gotti did what certain people, like his mentor, Neil Delacroce, I say is pretty overrated, because the one thing Neil didn't do, he didn't have the balls to take what he wanted, right? He wanted to be the boss, but you got to do what you got to do to become the boss. And John realized that and said, you know what? I'm going to break a rule. R.J. Roger wrote a book called 36 Rules of the Bosses, and he outlines 36 things that various mobsters have done to become what they become. And one of them is you have to take what you want. You have to be willing to kill your boss to get what you want. And John Sr. did that. Wasn't the boss for very long. Truthfully, and I think it's fact, he didn't do anything generational to fix the mafia or do anything good.
Right.
Do I think he did more things to hurt the mob than help it? Yeah, I do. I think that's been presented with fact. But whenever I talk about Junior or any of the Gottis, I try to bring something and have facts to back it up. The truth is, though, I don't hate them. I've given them various opportunities to come on and have a civil conversation. I do think sometimes, some of the
let's just end it right there.
Yeah.
Because, I think you did that very good. And it shows that you don't have a hatred. Sometimes we in here, this gets very difficult sometimes for us. You got to admit it does. Because you remember, you said a couple things. I called you up. We argued on the phone about it.
Mm-hmm.
Put the phone down. That was it. It was over.
Yeah, I think if I could say one final thing on it, I commend, I know that the grandson is fighting Floyd Mayweather, which, that is an incredible. I don't think people understand how big that is. You're fighting possibly the greatest fighter of all time, a guy that's never lost, right? And he's going to take you and say, "You're my next opponent." Like, that's incredible.
Yeah. That's perfect for his brand. Talking about a brand, the Mayweather brand. My
good for him. They've done a really good job in the post mob life of John Jr. He's done a great job at putting out, things and trying to get involved with legit business. I would like to see Witzak Mafia. I don't know when that's going to come out. I'd like to see it. But yeah, I just try to present the fact and go from there.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We're going to talk about another character, a guy full of hate and vitriol, and he's just not a nice guy.
Not sure who you're getting at here. Who is this? I'm curious.
Sammy Gravano.
Yeah. And can you also, while at it, mention how you got the interview with Sammy the Bull? Was it, and because it's very fascinating to me, because I know you had Barstool Sports kind of part about it. I don't know where that bifurcation is between, because I always thought of the sit down is your thing, but maybe they sponsor you, or
I work. I'm an employee at Barstool. They have the ability to license my show, and they push ads out on it and do all that sort of thing. And they have afforded me the studios and all this stuff that I have. But I think it definitely also gives me the opportunity to go to an individual like Gravano and say, hey, I represent a company called Barstool, and we have a lot of people that probably don't know who you are, a lot of young people. And I think this is a good opportunity for you. And it's pretty simple. I know a lot of people thinking I paid him thousands of dollars or things like that. I didn't. He'll tell you that himself. I contacted his website, his company, and I said, basically, hey, I have a show at Barstool Sports. It's about the mafia and organized crime and different crime. And I was curious about getting Sammy on my show. And they responded pretty quickly and said, yep, we'd be happy to. When do you want to do it? I told them. They said, okay. Sammy will call you the night before. And I remember I was in New York City at our office on 7th Avenue, and I got this phone call, and I answered, and it was, here's Sammy. That's what they said. And he gets on the phone and, hey, how you doing? And, starts talking to me and he asked me a little about who I am. And we started getting into some things. And I think we spoke for a half hour. It's pretty, I actually had told him, I said, Sammy, I kind of want to keep a lot of this to the interview, but he was very gracious. He gave me 2 hours, which is, I think, kind of unheard of in an interview. I think Sammy is, if you're going to say A-Light's the most maligned figure, I would say Sammy probably is the top level guy. A lot of people either love him or hate him. The one thing I'll say about him is he had a fascinating life, and people want to hear it. People know his name from the Gotti stuff. I think he is also a guy that has gotten a little too deep and changed his story sometimes. And I think you have to take his word sometimes. And it was a tough interview for me because I didn't necessarily get to ask some of the things that I wanted to, but I respected he didn't want me to ask about his brother-in-law and certain things like that. And it's a tough thing interviewing him. And, Jeff Canarsie, who I've had issues with, but he said something at one point and said, he kind of respected what I did, because when you interview Sammy Gravano, if you mention something he doesn't want you to talk about, he'll just end the interview. And I just didn't want that to happen. He was nice to me. I think now maybe we don't have the greatest relationship.
Why did that happen? Because you didn't do anything wrong in the interview. I thought.
Well, because I think after the fact, I will not also sugarcoat who Sammy Gravano is. Sammy Gravano is a killer who killed his friends to maintain his stature as a high-ranking member of the mafia. And I think this point, he has tried to parade around that he is this, his team at one point said to me, Jeff, he is not a rat. He is a government witness. He's not a rat, right? And I kind of look at it and I say, like, he's not a Boy Scout, right? He's a mobster. And I think this push on him changing his life, I've always had the phrase, you can't be a bulldog and pretend you're a Rottweiler. Okay.
Yeah.
You're a bulldog and you have to just accept who you are. Me, I'm not in the mafia. I accept who I am. I'm not going to make a story up. Sammy doesn't need to embellish
he doesn't
at all. I think putting him on live.
He's one of the few guys here that doesn't have to embellish.
Yes.
And he was great his first year, with the Our thing. It was great. And I remember when he first came, his first interview, and that's how I got into this genre, was listen to Our Thing the first year or two.
Yes.
And he was saying during COVID, and he said, I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I thought he was going to be real about it. And he's been changing. And the book, Underboss, one of the best books ever about the
James,
American
I think
mafia.
the reason Sammy has trouble now is that he has, and I think the one thing that you, me, Lee, FBS, whoever, anybody that does this sort of thing, the one thing we have a leg up on Sammy and Michael on is we can truly talk about anything. Okay, they are only tethered to what they did, right? And I think Sammy just kind of has run out of things to talk about.
True.
I think putting him on lives I get why they do it. I mean, it's a huge money grab, but
it
puts him in a situation where the one thing we can remember about live shows compared to this kind of show that we're doing recorded is you can edit it, right?
Yeah.
And Sammy can't edit things now, right? And we've seen, him
he's getting in trouble.
And I've likened it. I did a show at one point on the connections that Sammy has to Joe Biden. I think they're very similar people at this point.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, I'm not going to say I support what he does, but we can't get away from the fact that he's been a politician for a long time. I mean, nobody can argue that. Same as Sammy. He was a gangster for a long time. But when you get to a certain age, you have to recognize that you're not as spry as you once were, and you're not a spring chicken anymore. And maybe you process a little bit slower, or you don't remember things quite as well. And what we're learning now, guys, is the internet is a gateway to correcting and finding things that say, hey, when you did this interview with Diane Sawyer, you had this story. And now you have this story. And you have people like Mikey Scars coming out who are saying, wait, hold on a second. That's not how it went on. And
Mikey Scars is right next to him.
Right. And Mikey Scars is some corner boy associate. He was a very powerful individual.
But have you
Mikey
Yeah.
Scars has had the greatest line ever said on here amongst these guys. Sammy Gravano called him a hangaround, and and his answer was yes. I hung around John Gotti. I mean, could you have a better answer than that?
When I think also it's just not true. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the issue, you know, whether or not fact should or whether you like someone should not get in front of a fact, right? Like
Yeah.
Anthony Casso, I personally hate. I think he's the most
I
depraved
agree.
person ever associated with the mob. Like he is a true sociopath, a guy that would kill
Exactly.
women and children and then do all of it and then say, you know what, I'm going to tell on everyone. Like
He's like a
very,
he's even worse than Roy DeMeo.
yeah, he's a
DeMeo is bad.
sickening human being. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to let my personal issue or hate on the guy get in the way of who he was. And I think Sammy did that. I think Sammy should just come out and said, you know what? Michael was an interesting guy. I don't always agree with some of the things he did. I'll present my story. He's going to present his and go from there. I don't.
But he's using his platform to attack people that have you noticed the people that he doesn't like? It doesn't matter if they've been dead for 30 years. He will go after them.
He did it
today,
on
and
my
they were
interview,
nothing.
James.
Yeah.
He was very, a lot of vitriolic hate against George DeChico, I believe, or
Yeah.
Joe DeChico.
Yeah, the one Joe
Butterass, yeah.
Butterass, right?
He told me, Sammy told me that if he could dig him up from a grave, he would shoot him again if he could.
Right.
Not that he ever shot at him or anything, but he wanted to kill him again. That's how much he hated him. And it's like, you know, he definitely has hate towards people, but you know, Sammy is again recognized what you can do on the internet. You want to get a good 40-50% to believe you, and you can make a lot of money. And you know, he's done a lot like what Michael's done.
And there's two more guys I'm gonna bring up here before we end our interview. But these are two guys that I think are kind of interesting. One you really like, and I'll bring him on last. But there's this one guy on here that he's been given every opportunity to survive or do great in life. And he shows exactly why these guys in the street really can't help themselves. They have issues mentally, I believe. And I'm talking about Gene Barillo. Here's a guy that he's in jail now, and who knows what's going to happen with him. But the fact of the matter is, there's a guy that went down to Florida, had his stuff together. He could excel. He started excelling, and all of a sudden, he just went in the dumpster. Do you think that that he represents exactly what a lot of these gangsters are wannabe gangsters were on the street? They just can't help themselves.
Yeah, I've said many times. I think Gene has not wised up and realized he's not a kid anymore. He's
about 40 years old.
He's not 22, 24 years old. He's near 40, as you said. And I think Gene is a guy who, and what I'm about to say, you might think, no way, but I think he has all the ability to become the next Chris Paciello. I really do. I mean, good looking kid. I mean, he's in great shape. I mean, women love him. I mean, I think he has some sort of intelligence. He has people around him that I think are willing to give him money to invest in businesses. He's a guy that if he just had some guidance around him, I think he could do very well in life. I told him before, I said, Gene, why don't you get into like acting or something? Like get in to do some Gravesend work or something, like some sort of film. Like you have an interesting personality. I've said to Gene a few times, like I've talked to him. I think he's kind of likable when he's not, a total buffoon. He's likable.
Yeah.
But I think Gene has some very destructive things that have happened in his life. I think he's the sheer definition of person that did not have a father around, and he gravitated towards bad people who told him that if he did bad things, he could be okay. And I think if he were, and he agreed with me when I told him, I said, Gene, if you were around the 80s, I think you would have died in a hail of bullets on a street corner somewhere.
They would have killed him right away.
Yeah. And he I think agreed to that. And some of his behavior on the internet is abhorrent to me. I think it's pathetic. It's sickening. And he has got to wise up because he is the true he's a lot like Rob Rosso. Rob was given an opportunity and he was not able to leave the world that he was familiar with behind.
See, I can understand Rob though messing up more for the simple reason Rob is institutionalized.
Sure.
He never got. He
Absolutely.
came out. He never got rid of that being institutionalized. Where this guy is not institutionalized. A matter of fact, he gave evidence so he wouldn't become institutionalized.
But remember though, Lee, like one thing we forget about with Gene is like he was another guy that was around really powerful people. I mean, Ronnie G's a captain, one of the most respected people left, probably a hierarchy material down the road.
I agree.
Out. And Vinny Osaro, who I mean is been around the mob for decades. Like,
Yes.
I mean, he's a respected guy. And I think again, we go back to the same word of why these guys have to feel the need to embellish and lie. Just be who you are. Like, I don't think anyone will disagree. Gene did some screwed up shit, but he was a tough dude and he doesn't need to embellish. And then some of the stuff he's done online is just really kind of lowbrow and sick.
But he has the it factor.
Oh,
he
absolutely.
did pretty good with his show for a while, wasn't he? With A-Light and so
and if I'm him,
pretty good.
I would have went. Gene is a guy that needs stability around him, some sort of a routine. I think Gene would benefit, and I told Dom this. I said I think Gene would benefit very well from a person like Dom around him. Dom Sakali. Dom is a guy who, say what you want about what he did, but he has tried to make good out of his life, right? And he needs some sort of mentor, person around him, And like I said, I think he'd do well with like some sort of acting or it's a good-looking guy, get into modeling or something. I don't know, but I also think he has a major problem with women. And
you know why? You're pumping me up so much. I'm thinking about after this, I might try to become an actor or a model. Okay. Well, listen, I'm gonna close this out. You're probably
let me ask you real quick. And I'll just say this: Gene has also. I told him he needs to pick women better. I think it's a big catalyst to his problems.
Yeah.
And, some of us have that. I have a problem with that. I picked the wrong women a lot. My mother hates it, but it just is what it is. I know, Lee, you have that problem. You're a big ladies man. You have problems with that too, right?
God has gotten me in trouble. That's why I'm with no lady right now.
What have you been married 6 times, Lee?
Yes. And but the fact of the matter is, it's where I am now. And Gene, I hope to see Gene make my age and not do something stupid that's going to put him away for life.
You had some real interesting run-ins with him, Lee, over the years. You and him back.
Gene and I were very close for about 6 months.
Yeah.
I tried to talk to him like an older father figure type guy, but once he had his bracelet removed from his ankle, he went wild. It was like they took that bracelet off that wild bull.
Yeah.
And he went. And what did the bull do? He went out sniffing around to find a female, and the women that he likes are crazy. And when you put crazy with crazy, you get crazy.
That's the thing about really attractive women. A lot of the time, there's a reason. Like if you find a really hot single woman that's like in her 30s,
there's a problem there.
There's a reason she's not. And look, a good woman. I mean, it's hard to find, and that. Women do some crazy things, and there's reasons they're not with someone. So.
Well, over time, when I'm going to ask you this one question when you finish off, then I'm going to let James ask you his final question, and then we'll just wrap it up. But I noticed when I talk to you, you seem to come closer to a certain person more than anybody on here. And I want to ask you if I'm correct and why is it? And I'm talking about Frank Fiordolini.
Yeah, I would say out of all the guys that I've met, interviewed, I've tried to interview the all sorts of people, cops, judges, whoever. Frank is a guy that I think become a friend with. We're looking to link up real soon and have dinner and hang out. I think he's really the epitome of what I find interesting about this whole world. Frank is a guy who wasn't a made guy, but he's around these, farm teams. Frank is a guy that not a lot of people realize. I mean, his family goes back hundreds of years in the mafia, back to Sicily. Yeah. His whole childhood was the goal of people in their family was to become gangsters. And he is a cautionary, sad tale of what, when you're around and it's all what you become. And I find Frank sadly, sad, really. That's kind of the word I put. I find a lot of sadness in his story. I feel bad for him. Look, he did what he did and he has his reasons and he never sugarcoats what he did. You have to realize, guys, Frank is literally alone. He has none of his family communicate with him because of what he did. I can tell when I speak to him, the sadness he has he misses his friends. He wants nothing more than to live in the neighborhood he grew up in, but he knows because of the decisions he made, that's how it is. And people will say, well, good, that's how you should live. But
and I think before people become an informant, they should look at Frank.
Oh yeah,
I think should I do the 20 years or should I be like Frank?
He's a major cautionary tale of someone, and I've realized and learned he is such a wealth. He knows so many people. He has told me stuff, and look, I'll admit, I've sent him cash apps occasionally because of all the information he's given me on guys he grew up around, and he knew everyone. He was with Joey Messino. He knew Joey Messino, and it's really a great intimate look into that world. And he's a great guy, good guy. And I hope he finds some peace in his life because he lives with a lot of demons for sure.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to share that. And because I really have no issues. Me and him had a couple of things, but but the fact of the matter is that he's the perfect example of if you are going to become an informant, think about everything you're going to lose. And he lost everything from becoming an informant. James, what would you like to ask Jeff to finish this off and make it good?
All right. So what's next for Jeff Nadu? So I know you're going to buy a house. I heard that on.
I move next Friday. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. Yeah. Love to hear more about that. And then what's your goals now for so you kind of touched on it. So you make a yearly goal. So what's your goal for 2023? And then what's your goals for the next 5 years?
Well, my goal for 2023 is I work in the business of contracts, right? So like I don't get a job and have a job for the rest of my life. Every year I'm given a contract and I get paid on what I'm able to produce to a company. And it's a lot like an athlete. You get a 3-year contract. I went back to Barstool, was given a year contract. My contract is up. And I think it's deciding, where I'm going to go next. And, do I go back there? Do I get more money? And it's really just about goals, leveling up, making more money, because I was always taught, why work at a job for $10 an hour? You can make 10,000 an hour.
Right.
And my goal is to keep leveling up and, get to a point where I'm making, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year doing this. I just want to do stuff I enjoy doing and make money. And that's my greatest thing I've ever done is I know that on a Monday, I don't got to really be sick to my stomach, that I don't have to go to a regular job and be like everyone else. I can dictate every day what I do. And that's what I'm most proud of that I've done in my life. But I would just say 2023 is to just further do, create another contract or another opportunity for myself. And, I really would love to, and I've said before, I love talking about the mafia, but I think there's so much more to organized crime than just the mafia.
I agree.
That's a real, I think, tough thing for someone like myself to break into other things just because people are so familiar with that. But I have an end game for all this. When I'm 40, I'm going to hopefully leave all this stuff behind me and go.
Boy, what I would give to go back to 40.
Well, I always sports bet, guys, and that's the love I have and the passion I have for that. But I don't always want to do media. I'd love to move abroad at some point.
Jeff, you could make. I want to give you an opportunity. A lot of people are going to hate you after this or love you, but here's what it is.
Okay.
I'm a Celtic fan.
Okay.
It's the only team I'm not a Knicks fan. I've always been a Celtic fan because I was a big Larry Bird fan.
Fair enough.
And so now we know that Philadelphia is going to be going into Boston, a game that is very hard to predict. Give us the spread in that game right now and who's going to win.
Yeah, so it's funny. One thing I've never been shy about is my disgust at this point for the Philadelphia 76ers ownership and management. I think they're a horrifically run team for my whole life. And I grew up on basketball. I mean, Allen Iverson was my hero growing up. I loved the Sixers. I went to games all the time. But I begun to hate the team because I think they constantly waste superstars and don't give them the talent they need around them. And they have poor coaching and just all sorts of things. I firmly believe they're going to go into Boston tomorrow and lose. They're 7-point underdogs, and I think they should be. I think Boston is definitely a better basketball team. We'll see how well Joel Embiid plays. But I thought the game the other night was a sure definition of they didn't get much out of Jason Tatum and still won the game, which is huge.
Yes.
Exactly.
They did everything wrong, Boston, and they won the game.
Yeah. I think this is probably the biggest game in Sixers history since probably the 2000s when they went to the NBA Finals. This is, if they lose tomorrow, you are going to hear a lot. I think Doc Rivers will be fired. I think you're going to start hearing a lot about what is Joel Embiid's future here. I mean, at one point you have to say, well, he's never won shit. I mean, he's a great player, but he's never won anything. So I think they will lose. I had them losing to the Celtics. I'm sure I'll get a lot of videos with the laughing thing.
I'm going to take Philly with the 7.
I think probably you're right. I think Philly will probably hang in the game, and I think they'll probably lose a game like 108, 103, and just not have enough. Kind of like the Knicks last night with the Heat. I thought the Knicks played really well, but they don't have a Jimmy Butler, and I think
they don't. They don't have that one guy that can just go down there and hit that shot, and it's going to happen.
That's the difference in the two teams.
Okay, well, real quick, very interesting series. Lakers are hot as hell. They're going to go into Denver. Who wins the series?
Man, this is such a great series. You got LeBron, who is to me the second best player of all time, against, to me, the best player in the NBA, Nikola Jokic. He is terrific. If you don't watch basketball and you've never seen him play, please go watch him. He's fantastic.
He will be known after this series.
Oh, absolutely. And to me, I thought he was the MVP this year, probably. But I'm going to go with Denver. I've said before, I think they're the best team in the NBA. The addition of getting Jamal Murray healthy is huge for them. Michael Porter has turned into a terrific player. I just kind of like the role players they have with KCP and some of the other, Braun and some of the other kids they have. But Murray and Jokic are so terrific. I love both of them. I think they will beat AD and LeBron. I just think their team is just a little bit better. I'm going to go Lakers, and I'm going to go in the next series. I'm going to pick the Heat. I think Jimmy Butler is just so awesome. I love Jim. I think Spoelstra's probably the best coach in the NBA.
I believe whoever wins the Boston-Philadelphia game will beat Miami.
Fair enough.
I also believe that Denver will win in 5. And the main reason I say that is because they have another weapon on their hand. It's called altitude. And I am from that. I lived 10 years in that area. They're coming off a series. They got to go in Denver 2 games. By the time they lose Denver, to go back to LA.
Lee, I want to tell you something funny before we wrap up here. I know we've been on a while. And I want to tell you guys, this has really been enjoyable. Great interview.
Oh, thank you.
Really appreciate
we enjoyed it too. We'd like to make our interviews here different. So when people watch this interview, they say, oh, well, that's an interesting interview.
You're slowly becoming up to my level, Lee, interviewing. But I will say this about the Denver Nuggets and the altitude thing, Lee. One of the biggest misnomers in sports is altitude. It is the biggest joke of an argument you can make. And let me tell you why, Lee. The individuals that are in the NBA Finals have been playing basketball for decades, okay? They've been to altitude. They've been playing in altitude many times. Here's when altitude means something. You go college basketball, right? You have a team from North Carolina that has a bunch of kids from North Carolina, and they got to go play in altitude. That's concerning. Do I think it might be a small amount of something? Yeah. But I just think Denver's a better team. I just do.
Yeah, I think they're a better team too. I just think, and when I say altitude, I don't mean you got these phenomenal athletes. It's not going to affect. It's going to affect the LeBrons, and it's going to
older guys.
The older guys.
The end of the game. I think there's, I guess, a small method of belief in that. But I think
I can be look stupid. Hey, listen, in a week from now, people will say, "Hey, Lee, when you said that," but you know what? I like great series. That's what it comes down to. And I like this.
That'll be a great series.
And his center from Denver, I want people to understand how great he is.
Yeah.
I mean, the way he passes, he rebounds, he does everything. The guy's phenomenal.
I think it's been an enjoyable NBA play. I'm
watching every game. I haven't done that in years.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have badmouthed, like the NBA when I was younger was great. There was a lot of rivalry, but we're starting to see, there are rivalries, and that's what I think what's so great about like a Draymond Green. Like he's not a guy people love, but he kicks off with other teams and the refs, and it's fun. I've enjoyed this.
This is the first year in about 5-6 years I'm watching all the games. They're so fun. This is what basketball is supposed to be about. This reminds me of when Bird played against Johnson, that grind, that hitting against the boards, that dirty type of playing. That's what it reminds me of.
Well, I think you've also had a lot of you haven't had a lot of injuries either this year. You have a lot of the stars that are playing, right? The Jamal Murrays, the Jason Tatums, the Nikola Jokic's, the Embiids, the Jimmy Butlers.
But you got to worry about Anthony Davis. He might sneeze and pull a shoulder.
He's the one guy, right?
Well, he's that one guy. He's that one guy.
Yeah. Hey, Lee, before we go, I got to ask you, when are you going to come up to where I'm at? We'll go out and have a dinner or something.
Why do you think I'm dieting right now? I've lost 40 pounds now. I'm wearing shirts I haven't worn. Look at this. This shirt I could not put on.
Well, good for you. I'm proud of you. Good for you. I always say, Lee, the one thing I'm going to try to do someday, I don't know if you've ever seen the photo, but there's a photo of the Bloods and the Crips at one point having peace, right? And they both have the red and the blue bandanas and they're holding them up.
Yeah.
My goal one day is to get Chris Ladrago, aka the Fat Ball Sicilian, and Lee Cole to put bygones be bygones, and maybe one day shake hands. Look, do I ever think you'll be friends? No, but I think when we all look back in 10 years on this, it'll just be a funny part of life. Now I know people have really gotten down and dirty sometimes, and it's really sickening. But I think all in all, it's been a wild. I couldn't even describe this to someone.
I think they're too much alike. That's what it is. In a lot of ways, they're both survivors.
And the thing is, you got to remember,
scrappers.
And him and I came in here together on the same days, just about. And from the very beginning, we've been through. We're like these old bulldogs have been battered and beaten, and we're still here.
Yeah, that's the thing about both of you. You still have you've both ironed out your own thing, and you have your own thing. And I'll admit, I think I get a kick out of when he busts your balls and you bust. I mean, like the show you did the other day. Like in the end, I think you both held your own.
That was my final time that I'm ever doing that. That's why I did it. I just wanted to have fun.
Yeah,
it was my way of having fun, getting in there. And people can say he won a debate. I don't care. I just had a good time that day, because all these people that talk crap about the debate and stuff. Here's what it comes down to, Jeff. How many people in these genres have enough balls to go into his territory for 2 hours and battle?
No, not very many. And Lee, there is. It's just funny. Like when you say things like, "Dude," you say that's funny. Like things you say and do, and things he says and does, and you have these ancillary characters too that just. You couldn't make some of them up, like some of the things, right? Like
you just couldn't. The stuff that goes on in there, you can't. But anyway, I want to thank you, James.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this, Jeff. Sure. Please don't go anywhere. I'm gonna shut this down. Everybody, please. I've been running this thing underneath here all this time. I didn't even realize.
You must have made a ton of money if you've been running that the whole time.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't realize I had it on. Please,
there you go. People, you had an hour and 20 minutes.
Subscribe. Not big enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy this. It was kind of a different type of interview. And thank you all so much. Take care.